Good afternoon from beautiful Brisbane, Australia, and welcome to Complex PTSD TV. My name's Linda. I'm your certified trauma recovery coach for complex trauma, and we do life together, both here online and in our Facebook group. And there's lots of information available here, both on the YouTube channel, which you can look into now, over 400 videos to get practical information and practical help to get you moving in your recovery and actually taking great strides as well. And for those who choose to as well, thank you for coming on board and choosing me as your trauma coach. And I know that you've been achieving a lot through this. A couple of things today. One, we're going to talk about the impact of anger, that when we experience anger in our childhood, what's the impact in our adulthood. All right, so that we can take this information and either use it with our trauma coach or with our trauma-informed therapist. So not just trauma-informed therapist, but a therapist that has actually worked to know and understand complex trauma. For those that have been here for a while, you know that not only do I do the coaching, but I've also lived this myself. So we get to work through it a lot quicker with effective recovery. Now, two things. The internet, no, not the internet. The technology behind the internet has finally caught up to where I need it to be. And I'm now moving everything from one platform to a whole platform together where you can experience everything that you need for recovery. So if you've joined the free resource library, I'll now have a new link down below, which should be there. And you can join the new free resource library, which will have new information, and it will have everything from the old library brought over to it. So head down to the link. Now, the other thing is we like and subscribe and share, because the majority of people are still not comfortable talking about mental health, and we need to be bringing that forward into our lives, into our daily life at home, and we need to be able to find our voice and use the information that we share here so that you can begin to reclaim your life, all right, and say, yes, this has happened, but now I have a path through as well. So now, with all of that having been shared, we want to get right into the nuts and bolts of what happened when we lived in an angry household. So where our caregivers were, well, in my case, spontaneously angry, and you're walking on eggshells, and what happened. Now, why do we want this information? We want it so that we can take it along to our coaching or therapy sessions, and we want to be able to understand and get validated what happened for us. We want to be able to go, right, what's the structure and strategies I need? What's the extra psych information that I need? With complex PTSD, we need more psych education so that we can wrap our mind around what's happening and we can continue to connect to ourselves, all right? Because what complex PTSD has done is left us in a position as adults where we learned, and our brain learnt, that it's not safe to connect to myself. I have to keep acting outside of myself to be safe, all right? And these are unconscious things. These are not things that we do consciously, but as we bring them back into our consciousness and we connect to self, then we're going to be able to go, right, this is where I need. Now, a lot of the talk that goes around the traps is, if you're focusing on yourself, you're selfish. Those people need to take a reality check, because when it comes to complex PTSD, that's not the truth. We actually have a part of our brain where, until we do the self-reflection, our brain is not able to function fully without this part. Now, I should have brought you the infographic today, but we'll do that another day. So when I'm focusing on reflecting what's happening for me internally, then my brain actually works to connect the thinking part of the brain and the emotional part of the brain so that we can bring them back together, okay? So it is not your fault because also in childhood we were, the unspoken, the non-verbal messages were, don't focus on yourself, you have to focus on the adults, because that was the only way to be safe. So some of the things that happened when there was anger in our childhood and we're now adults, some of the things that we need to identify, wrap our mind around and start working on are when we feel guilty for having needs. And if you're a mum like me, you still work through this feeling guilty to have needs. One of the great things that's happened for me is my daughter's going to have a baby. And she said to me as she's going through the whole pregnancy thing, it's like coming to a deeper understanding of what happened for her mum. And so when she does that, there's also healing for me that somebody understands what I went through as well. And it's not about trauma bonding at all. We're both independent adults and we're, conversing about what's happening for her. She gets validated, and then I understand, someone understands what happened for me. And the very big decisions that I had to make as a mum in order that my kids wouldn't keep repeating generations of handed down trauma. Now, so if we feel guilty for having our needs, what are we going to do? All right, so that's the question that you need to take to your trauma coach or therapist. I'm feeling guilty for having my needs. I recognize it's from when anger went through my house as a childhood. What do I need to do? Now, the reason why I'm not sitting here giving you 50 million solutions is because with complex PTSD, everybody's different and our needs are different at different stages of our life, all right? So what suits one person doesn't suit another, and we have to be really conscious of that. If not, we then, perpetuates what's gone on in families for generations, that we should all be the same and there's one formula for life and this is how it's done, all right? And this is why families keep falling apart, because everyone keeps expecting everyone to do the same and be the same for generation after generation, and it's just not going to work. That's another chat show too. Okay, so as adults who've experienced anger in childhood, we can feel bad about crying or showing emotions. I know that, decades ago when I was a young mum, I used to go away and hide in the bedroom. Glennon Doyle, she used to go and hide in her wardrobe, all right, with the anxiety, etc. It's a common thing that we go away to express our emotions because that's what we were taught to do. We weren't taught that we sit down and actually have a conversation about how this is impacting me, how is it impacting the other people in my home, where do we go from here, and we're willing to have a messy conversation in order that we have growth, all right? We're taught that we should hide our needs, all right? So combined with complex PTSD, when we hide our needs, it's hard to get into the space where we connect to self and we want to get back into, well, what is it I need so that I can start being connected to self and stop people pleasing for everybody else. And that's another thing that we do from the anger in our home. We people please, and that's actually a part of our brain that we need to develop so that we can stop people pleasing as well. So it's not just a behavioral response that needs changing, it's actually doing our internal work so that our brain gets on board and stops all the unconscious responses, all right? We learn that we don't believe that we deserve to get our needs met. And wrapping your mind around the fact that you actually do deserve to get your needs met takes time. Don't give up, all right? Whatever you do, don't give up. It's worth doing the work to know that if you can identify your needs in a healthy relationship, both partners come together and both meet each other's needs. So it's not about one or the other. It's about both of us stepping up to the plate and both of us saying, hey, I need this, and both of us being flexible. It's not about changing our core self. It's about going, yeah, okay, I can meet that need or I can't meet that need. How can we do this together? all right? It's not about one or the other. Where in our childhood we were wired neurologically that it's all about the parent. So we actually have to do a lot of heart work around this, because sometimes, I know in my earlier years, I used to feel like, you want me to meet your needs all the time, but what about me? But then it's my responsibility to know what I need, and if the other person's not stepping up and working, we're not working together, then there's issues that have to be resolved as well. That's a whole other different chat show. But we need to step up and be conscious of what we need and be able to say it as well. And we use people pleasing to diffuse situations. So rather than saying, okay, the anger taught us that unless we people please, we weren't safe. All right. So now we have to affirm as adults that we are safe, right? I'm safe and I don't have to people please, and I can have a real and raw conversation about what you need, what I need, what's happening, what I'm thinking, what are you thinking, and assuming that we don't know until we've had the conversation, all right? We grew up fearing our emotions, all right? Because there was no emotional intelligence in our family. There was no emotional conversations. There was no emotional equipping. So one of the things I did when my kids were growing up is we always talked about feelings and gave them names, all right, so that my kids were able to say, this is how I'm feeling. Now, I didn't grow up this way, so when I taught my kids this, I learned as well, and that's the best thing. So teach your kids and teach yourself at the same time, so that it begins to become a norm for us that we can learn from it. Okay. We learnt that life is unpredictable, especially with people who blow up in their anger. Like, it can just appear out of nowhere and all of a sudden they're angry and you're like, so that's not calm, and it's chaotic, it's dramatic. Its impact on the nervous system is like, you live like a cat on a hot tin roof. Like, they go off and explode, and then it's like, what, where do I go from here? What do I got to do? And, can contribute to us being frozen all the time as well. And we learnt that the world isn't safe, all right? So it's adults acting out who never took control of their own behaviour. That anger in response to stating needs is normal. So we learnt that people who go off and are angry, then that's the way to state my needs. So it can be an alert pattern. I know in my family, in the male side in particular, it's okay, to them it's okay if I go off and be angry, because that's just what's been handed down for generations. And it's not okay. Okay, we're adults. We need to sit down and have gentle, kind, caring conversations. And always remember that if there's anger there, we want to look underneath it to what's actually driving the anger, okay? We learnt that we have to expect and accept anger. So as adults, it takes a lot of courage for us to turn around and say, well, no, that's not good enough. I'm not living my life in a space where anger is acceptable, or that I have to live in a place of walking on eggshells because you get angry and you can't, or you choose not to go and do something about learning how to manage your anger and work through what's underneath and driving it. Instead, you're putting it on me, that it's my fault that you're angry. No, it's not my fault you're angry, all right? Now, if I'm angry, my kids know that it's a rare day I'm angry, so they know if I'm angry that I'm either hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And I also know if I'm angry that it's not normal, so that we can sit down and go, they say, Mum, now my kids are adults, by the way, what's going on? What happened for you? And we have those open conversations, and it's way better. It's way better than anyone ever thinking that anger is an acceptable way to live, because it's not, okay? Sometimes anger is a normal response to adverse situations, absolutely, but I'm talking about living in a space where anger is expressed, like could be expressed 24/7, or it goes on and on and on, and there's no resolution. It is not good, and it is not healthy for relationships to be with anyone who is constantly angry, all right? And their only response to anything that you want to talk about is anger, right? Because that just shuts us down as adults, and we don't want that. We want to be able to get in and have raw and real conversations and be messy and go and explore what's happening for us, because then we can get up and go, hey, this is what's happening for me, and I want to see where this goes. And you know what? There are adults who are willing to have these conversations. So for me, I won't stay with people who are angry, all right, whose only response to adversity is anger, all right? It's not a long-term solution to long-term problems either. We might have a short-term response, but you want to be around people who know that they can manage their emotions and go, hey, yeah, that's not the right response, or yeah, I can see that I was angry, but this is what happened, and that know how to apologize and say, oh yeah, I'm really sorry. I know someone from my childhood who would just explode with anger, and they never knew the words I'm sorry. They could never see that their impact on other people was hurtful. Don't be around people like that. Yes, it's like I'm in bossy mode today. Just don't do it. Don't do it for your own health, for your own mental health. And then we learnt to doubt ourselves. So one of the impacts of complex PTSD is we get used to numbing our emotions in childhood because the adverse childhood experiences are ongoing, okay? So we don't come into adulthood confident of knowing who we are, who I am, why I'm here, what I'm here to do. You'll find that people who are successful in life have this roadmap implemented into their brain wiring when they're young. And it, as one young man that I know says, he spent hours at his grandparents' knee learning about business. And so it was wired into him from a young age how to do business. When we come out of toxic dysfunctional families and multi-generational toxic dysfunctional families, the only thing that our brain gets wired for is survival mode, okay? That's all we know. And so we have to give ourselves compassion and understanding that each step through recovery we learn. Everything that we want to do in life, we learn. And it takes time, but it's doable, all right? It absolutely is doable. So I want to encourage you that even when you get to a stage of recovery that you're feeling like there's a mountain and you can't get over it, there is a way through the mountain, not over it, through the mountain. And there are ways that we can devise strategy, structure, psych education about what's happening internally. And you can come through this. It does not mean that you will be in this space the rest of your life, but it does mean that we do take up the challenge of adulting and learning what's my one next step, and we do it together, all right? We do it together because that's how we're wired as individuals, to need community, to need connection, and we've got to take advantage of that as well. Thanks for joining in today. G'day, Mel, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.